The VapePassion Show, episode 57. In this episode, we're going to talk about Ron Johnson asks Tom Price to suspend the FDA's e-cig rules. Vape Wild releases their own cig-alike product. A new study suggests that vaping could be associated with cardiovascular risk. Nicotine salts versus free-base nicotine. And psychological tips to help you quit smoking. Hey, welcome back to the VapePassion Show. This is episode 57, and I'm recording this on Sunday, February 26th. So no new product for me this week, but I did just make a big order of e-juice from thesaucela.com. I've never actually tried these guys before, but I always see them doing really big sales, and one of my questions to you guys this week was going to be to ask your thoughts on their e-juice, if you've ever tried it, because I have been thinking about buying from them, but I just wanted to get other people's thoughts first. Another company I always see doing these really big sales is Fuggin e-juice, Fuggin, and which I've also never tried. But the Sauce LA did something crazy this weekend. On Reddit, they posted a coupon code to get 30 ml bottles of e-juice for only 99 cents each, when they're normally $9.99, so a really huge discount. That's 3 cents per milliliter. It's crazy. You can't DIY for that cheap. So I said screw it, and I went ahead and ordered all 12 of their flavors. So I got $120 worth of e-juice for $12. Well, actually $18 with shipping. And even if I don't like some of those flavors, that's a killer deal. I couldn't pass it up. I don't know how they can even stay in business with a sale like that. I am still interested in hearing your thoughts about the Sauce LA though, if you've tried it. And I'd also like to hear your thoughts on Fuggin e-juice. I'm always tempted to try Fuggin e-juice when they have a sale, which is like every couple of days. So if you've tried them, let me know. But they have so many sales, like I mentioned, every couple of days, that it makes me wonder if it's really like a really bad e-juice. But you know, who knows? And this week I do have a beer pairing, sort of. I'm just going to drink Death by Coconut. This is one of my favorite beers. I absolutely love this beer. It's from Oscar Blues Brewing Company, made in Colorado. It's a 6.5% alcohol, and it's a porter, an Irish porter, chocolate coconut. So very good beer. And with it, I'm going to pair Caramel Apple from Creme de la Creme, the line of e-juice from marinavapes.com. So Marina Vapes, they only sell wholesale, but they make a bunch of e-juices that go to other companies. So they go to other vape shops. So that's the only way you can get these e-juices. You can't buy directly from them. But I met them at a convention last year, and they hooked me up with a bunch of different flavors, and this was one of them, Caramel Apple. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it a try here. So you can see the bottle is really high quality. It's a really nice looking bottle. It's like a matte black paint and gold lettering. So it looks very good. It has a golden color, which is nice. No dyes or anything like that in there. The smell is very, very light. I don't get any caramel or apple out of it. Very, very smooth throat hit. I believe this is 6 milligrams nicotine, so 3 milligrams nicotine. It's sweet. It does have a bit of caramel, a tiny little bit, and you do get that apple in there, the tart apple. And I think the combination works really well, and I like that it's not so sweet that it's overpowering. It's actually very light. I think it's a really enjoyable e-juice. So the biggest drawback for this would be its price. I'm looking online and I'm seeing it for around $20 for a 30 ml bottle, so it's a very expensive e-juice. But if you're looking for something that tastes like caramel apple, sweet but not too sweet, I think you'll like it. All right, so let's give it a try with the Death by Coconut. Yeah, that's actually a very good pairing. The apple with that coconut flavor beer it's really good. I would like to have more apple though. An e-juice with a much stronger apple flavor would probably go even better with this beer. But very good. All right, well, let's get into the topics this week. First up, Ron Johnson asks Tom Price to suspend the FDA's e-cig rule. So on February 21st, Senator Ron Johnson continued his support for the vape industry by writing a letter to Tom Price, urging him to consider suspending the FDA's e-cig rule. Tom Price has been appointed by the Trump administration as the Health and Human Services Secretary. Ron Johnson's letter discussed the economic damage that the FDA's rules will cause, and also the harm to public health that will result of making vapor products inaccessible to people who want to use them as an alternative to smoking. If you're wondering why this is important, it's because the HHS oversees big government agencies, most notably in this case, the FDA. So Tom Price has a lot of influence over how the FDA will operate moving forward. He also has a background that could mean he would likely save the vapor industry. For one, he voted against a law that required the FDA to regulate tobacco as a drug. Tom Price also has a history of being pro-tobacco. He has voted against tobacco legislation, he has accepted donations from big tobacco, and he just recently sold off stock that he had in tobacco companies. So he's certainly not anti-tobacco. The concerning thing here, though, is that we know that big tobacco would love to kill the vaping industry, or at least everything other than the closed tank systems that they sell. So we'll just have to see if big tobacco has any influence over Tom Price's decisions, or if instead he'll support the vaping industry in the same way that he has tobacco. Also somewhat questionable is that he is a physician and an orthopedic surgeon and has been for more than 20 years. As a doctor in the United States, a place where most of the medical community thinks that vaping is as unsafe as smoking, it's hard to know what his stance will be on vaping. But hopefully he speaks further with Ron Johnson and in the end is in favor of electronic cigarettes. As of now, it looks like Tom Price is exactly who the vaping industry wants in charge of the FDA. All right, now let's talk some new products. So VapeWild released their own Cigalike product. I just got an email from VapeWild about this a couple of days ago. They released their very own disposable Cigalike to the market. So they're calling it the E1, which stands for everything in one. It appears to be like any typical everyday Cigalike that you'd find in a store, except for that it uses VapeWild's own e-juice, which I think is really cool. Most Cigalikes that I see have like boring and terrible flavors, but VapeWild makes incredibly interesting flavors. Whether you like them or not, they're pretty interesting. They're not always the highest quality, but I think this would make these Cigalikes much more appealing to a lot of people. The nicotine strength is 18 milligrams, and if you've ever used a Cigalike, that's not high at all for the wattage that these devices put out. In fact, 18 milligrams might be a little too low, considering that companies like Enjoy use 45 milligram nicotine in their own Cigalikes. And I know that a lot of people hate Cigalikes, but I personally love them. They're small and they're easy to carry around, they're cheap, and they can give you a quick nicotine fix without huge clouds. There are a lot of benefits to them in certain situations. So the flavors that VapeWild has are Apple of My Ice, which is a green apple and menthol, Cowboy Cooler, which is berries and menthol, Grand Poobah, which is peanut butter, banana, and tobacco, Strawberry Waterfelons, which is strawberry watermelon, Wrangler, which is a full-bodied tobacco, and Morning Ritual, which is a tobacco and Irish coffee. I wanted to order one of these, but they're $6, which isn't too bad, but shipping was also $6, and I just couldn't bring myself to spend the same amount in shipping as the e-cigarette itself. Hopefully VapeWild can do something to bring the cost down eventually. I'll probably get one at some point, but not right now. All right, let's talk science and research. So there's a new study that suggests that vaping could be associated with cardiovascular risks. In a new study out of the University of California, researchers set out to determine if habitual electronic cigarette users have increased cardiac sympathetic activity and oxidative stress, both of which are risk factors for future health problems. The researchers performed a cross-sectional study, which means it was an observational study that analyzed data from a subset of people at a certain period of time. And I want to point that out because observational studies are performed by looking at the data of other studies, which in many cases are flawed or biased. Which can not only be difficult for people like you and me to detect, but also the researchers doing the study. So with that said, let's get into the results of the study. The researchers hypothesized that in people who use electronic cigarettes regularly, they would have an imbalance of cardiac autonomic tone and increased systemic oxidative stress and inflammation. They looked at data from a study of habitual e-cigarette users and non-users from 2015 to 2016 at the University of California. All participants were determined to have no current tobacco cigarette use, no known health problems, and did not use any prescription medicine. The group consisted of 47 individuals between the age of 21 and 45. 23 participants were self-identified habitual e-cigarette users, and 19 were self-identified as non-tobacco, non-e-cigarette users. Basically, they analyzed heart rate variability and oxidative stress. There are two major components in the heart rate variability spectrum: high frequency and low frequency. High frequency is synchronous with respiration, while low frequency is a reflection of sympathetic activity. So the sympathetic nervous system controls your fight or flight responses. For example, if you're in a stressful situation, your sympathetic nervous system will increase your blood pressure and heart rate. If you constantly trigger your sympathetic system, it can lead to development of heart disease. So according to the researchers in this study, the data shows that compared to non-smokers, e-cigarette users show significantly decreased high-frequency HRV, which is respiration, and significantly increased low-frequency HRV, heart rate variability, which is the sympathetic activity. The data that they reviewed also found that habitual e-cigarette users showed low-density lipoprotein oxidizability, which is consistent with increased oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is not something you want. So oxidation happens when we process oxygen from the air that we breathe. The process results in free radicals that damage nearby cells and DNA. This is normal, but oxidative stress happens when the amount of free radicals exceed antioxidants. So in the end, the researchers came to the conclusion that the data that they reviewed shows that regular e-cigarette use could increase cardiovascular risk. And this isn't all that surprising considering the stimulating effects of nicotine. And this research also isn't proof that e-cigarettes will cause negative effects, but it's a sign that long-term use could be negative. And like I said earlier, this was an observational study based on data from a small group of people. This data might not be accurate at all. The only thing that it really shows at this point is that there might be potentially negative issues, and that's all it takes for these researchers to get more funding to continue research. And something else to realize is that oxidative stress and increased cardiac sympathetic activity also happens when you exercise. That doesn't mean that it's not harmful to the body in the long term, but it could mean that the results of the study are way overblown. All right, let's move on to the next topic. So let's talk nicotine salts versus freebase nicotine. And this is going to be a fairly technical segment, so I just want to point that out now. And I want to mention that I don't have a background in chemistry, but I love to do research, which is what I've done here. So I'm going to do my best to provide accurate information. But if I've gotten anything wrong here, please let me know, and I'll try to make corrections where I can. Okay, so a product that a lot of DIYers have been talking about lately are nicotine salts. These are basically a crystallized version of nicotine that come dissolved in VG and PG solutions. So first, let's talk freebase nicotine. Normally what DIYers and e-juice manufacturers use is a free compound version of nicotine, or a freebase. Freebase sounds bad because it's often associated with freebase cocaine, but freebase only means that it's in its purest form. Nicotine itself is a base and is not very potent in the body until the protons are removed. Nicotine absorbs protons, which results in the nicotine molecules becoming ions. Ions don't move across organic membranes very well, so they're less likely to affect the body. For nicotine to become potent, it needs to be deprotonated or converted into a freebase form. Freebase nicotine is the form that tobacco companies use and what most e-juice companies use. In order to deprotonate nicotine, companies add another base, ammonia, which is negatively charged and strips away protons. Liquid ammonia also separates the nicotine from the salts, which allows it to be extracted with steam. This process turns nicotine into a freebase and allows it to become more bioavailable to the lungs, brain, and central nervous system. Researchers have found that freebase nicotine is the most optimal version of nicotine. It allows it to bind to the nicotine receptors in the brain and the rest of the body, which is believed to make it more addictive since it will be more concentrated at the receptors. All right, now let's talk nicotine salts. So nicotine salts occur naturally in tobacco. Nicotine salt is a much more stable compound than freebase, but less volatile. Salts require more heat to volatilize to allow it to be inhaled, which is considered to be a less efficient delivery system. Nicotine salts have also been reported to have much smoother throat hit when compared to freebase nicotine, which allows users to use higher levels of nicotine more comfortably. And a good example of this in action is with the e-juice formulated by Juul, Juul. So Juul uses nicotine salts derived from the tobacco leaf, and because nicotine salts aren't absorbed by the body as well as freebase nicotine, Juul adds benzoic acid to their formula, and this helps to degrade the nicotine during the heating process. This makes it better absorbed by the body, but still retains that smooth throat hit. Their e-juice nicotine strength is 59 milligrams per milliliter, but due to the lower wattage of their devices and the smoother throat hit of the salts, the throat hit won't feel anything like 59 milligrams nicotine, but the user will still get a very strong nicotine buzz and quickly. Juul claims that their formula results in similar satisfaction someone would get from a cigarette, and they've even produced a chart showing how their formula results in a very similar blood nicotine level per time after first puff as tobacco cigarettes do. The big question here though is if all nicotine salt liquids that we can buy will work the same as Juul's formula with benzoic acid. Juul owns the patent on this formula, which might make it difficult for anyone to reproduce. But some companies are now producing nicotine salt liquids. NudeNicotine.com, for example, has 3 formulas of liquid nicotine made with salts. It's hard to say if their formulas will work as well as Juul's, but they might. So should you use nicotine salts? Well, Dimitris of Smoke Free Radio was recently on a live show on YouTube where he was asked his opinion on nicotine salts, and he said that he has absolutely no interest in using it at all because he doesn't want to be a guinea pig, and also he feels totally comfortable using a typical liquid nicotine. So why change? Well, from what I've seen in the research, there doesn't seem to be any reason to believe that nicotine salts are any more or less safe than freebase nicotine. The only major difference that you might notice is that it will react more quickly or slowly depending on the formula. And I personally wasn't at all interested in trying nicotine salts either, but after doing this research, I would actually like to pick some up and eventually play around with it. All right, and one more topic. Let's talk about psychological tips to help you quit smoking. So I got an email recently saying that No Smoking Day is coming up soon. It's actually an observance in the UK, but if you live anywhere else, there's no reason that you shouldn't take part if you're a smoker. So No Smoking Day takes place on the second Wednesday of March every year, which this year will be March 8th. So if you want to take part or show your support on that day, keep it in mind. The idea behind No Smoking Day isn't to pressure smokers into quitting. It's to get support if you're a smoker or offering support to others who want to quit. So I wanted to offer my own support by putting together some information that can help smokers quit. Some of you might be current smokers who haven't started vaping yet but are interested in vaping and just trying to learn more about it. Some of you might be dual users, which would be using both e-cigs and tobacco products. And some of you might be full-time vapers, but you might know somebody else who is still a smoker. No matter which group you're in, these tips will help you or a loved one to eventually quit smoking. One of the first things you can do to help you start the difficult task of quitting smoking smoking is to learn about the benefits and drawbacks of quitting smoking. So you know that quitting smoking has some benefits, such as that it will save you money, it will reduce the risks of heart disease, it reduces the risks of cancer and other smoking-related illnesses, it will increase your lifespan, it will improve your quality of life, you'll be able to exercise if you want to, you won't stink like cigarettes anymore, you won't have to go outside to smoke all the time, and your health and life insurance rates will go down. And there are also some drawbacks to quitting that you need to understand. It will be extremely difficult. You will probably gain weight for a while, and you will lose the social aspect of smoking with others. And knowing the full extent of your habit will really let it sink in, and will also let you fully prepare for what's in store for when you quit. All right, the second tip, figure out what triggers you. So all smokers have triggers that lead them to smoke. These can be both physical and psychological triggers. For example, stress from work, social anxiety, driving, eating, drinking coffee, and so on. Obviously, there are triggers you can't avoid, such as waking up, driving, or going to sleep. And in these cases, you need to disconnect the habit of smoking with these triggers. Before fully quitting, you can try to avoid smoking during these times to slowly work towards distancing the habit from the trigger. Your mind has been conditioned to expect the reward of nicotine during certain triggers. When your mind stops receiving that reward, it will begin to rewire itself to no longer expect it. It'll be hard for a while, but know that these triggers will go away. When you're struggling with a trigger, try taking deep breaths, or distract yourself by counting to 100, or by going through the ABCs in your mind while picturing something for each letter of the alphabet. Something that I've heard that when you are triggered to smoke, that trigger only lasts for about 3 minutes. So if you can distract yourself for longer than 3 minutes, hopefully you can get over it. And the sights and smell of cigarettes or smoke can also trigger your desire to smoke. So the smell on your clothes, the smoke wafting through the air from the smoking section at work, and a lighter sitting on the counter can all set off a trigger. So think of every trigger possible and do your best to eliminate or avoid it. Wash all of your clothes to get rid of the smell, throw away your cigarettes, your lighters, your ashtrays, walk the long way around the smoking section at work, and stay away from other smokers if you can. All right, the next psychological tip is to seek support. So a lot of people feel like quitting smoking is something that they need to do on their own, but evidence shows that getting support anywhere you can is more likely to result in quitting. You want to talk to your friends and family members about your desire to quit, and try to get close friends to quit with you, or ask them not to smoke around you. And if you need to, stop spending time with smoking friends, or at least temporarily in the early stages of quitting while your desire to smoke is the strongest. And research has also shown that counseling greatly increases the likelihood of quitting smoking. And I know counseling seems silly or even embarrassing to a lot of people, but it works. If you're serious about quitting, consider giving it a try. All right, the next tip, challenge and reward yourself. So one of the biggest psychological challenges of quitting smoking is thinking that you have to quit entirely right away. Instead, consider setting a realistic goal. Maybe quit for a couple of hours per day when you would normally smoke, and then move towards quitting for a day or two at a time. And you can celebrate those small victories and then keep challenging yourself to go bigger. And with each big victory, you can also reward yourself. For example, for the first time you don't smoke for a full day, you can buy yourself something special, like a fudge brownie or something, something sweet, a dessert or something, or dinner. Make it something that you're really looking forward to. And if you fail the challenge, you don't get that reward, but you can always keep trying. And for something big, like say for example, you go a full month without smoking, you can put the money that you saved by not smoking towards a nice gift for yourself. And many people are pack-a-day smokers. That's about $150 per month, depending on where you live. That could be a pretty awesome gift to yourself at the end of the month. All right, the next tip here, use a nicotine replacement product. Research has shown that less than 7% of people who try to quit without medications or nicotine replacement products are successful. Medications like Zyban, Chantix, and nicotine replacements like gum and lozenges increase percentage of quitters by up to 33%. And I know that many people are not fans of pharmaceuticals, and I can understand that from a lot of the horror stories that I've read about Chantix, but it does work for some people. It worked for my mom actually, who smoked for 40 years. So you shouldn't rule it out entirely if you've never tried it. Nicotine replacements like gum, lozenges, and the patch are also great aids in helping you stay away from tobacco. And although electronic cigarettes are not an FDA-approved cessation product in the US, it is in the United Kingdom. There is plenty of research showing that vaping greatly reduces harm when it replaces a smoking habit. We also know from thousands of personal stories from vapers that vaping can work to help you quit smoking. And it worked for me. I haven't smoked since 2010. Vaping is the closest that you'll get to the sensation of a real cigarette. And for some people, this is exactly what they need to quit. What most people do is they start at a high milligram nicotine level and then work their way down to zero until eventually quitting entirely. And no matter which method you take to quit, if one fails, try another. You never know which one might work best for you. All right, the next tip, replace bad habits with good habits. So people who have bad habits often need to replace their former habits with new ones. And a lot of times you'll hear about former drug addicts or alcoholics discovering that exercise fills the void that they were missing missing from drug use. So try to find a healthy habit, like running, weightlifting, or cooking healthy meals. Keeping your hands busy will also help. For example, you can try taking up drawing, painting, knitting, woodwork, or some other hands-on activity that you're interested in. And the final tip here, satisfy oral fixations. So when people quit smoking, they often feel the need to keep something in their mouth to satisfy an oral fixation. There are many things you can do, my favorite obviously being an electronic cigarette, but you can also try things like chewing gum, breath mints, chewing toothpicks, straws, cinnamon sticks, or licorice root sticks, eating hard candy, eating sunflower seeds, eating hard vegetables like carrots and celery. And I've also heard that people will use something called miswak. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's an Arab root used to clean teeth. One thing to be cautious of is that many quitters try to solve their oral fixation by eating foods, which can cause weight gain. And nicotine often staves off hunger, so when you quit smoking, you're already going to start gaining weight probably. So if you add foods into that equation to cure that oral fixation, you might gain even more weight. If you're worried about that, try something healthy that won't result in gaining weight. So that's all my tips. It's said that it can take about 72 hours for peak withdrawal from smoking. So those first 3 days are going to be the hardest, and these are the days that you'll need to prepare the most for. As a smoker, you know that this isn't going to be easy and there will likely be a relapse, but don't worry, it happens. The simple fact that you've been able to quit temporarily shows that you can keep doing it again and again, and each time quitting for longer periods of time. Okay, so that's all I have for this week. You'll find the show notes for this episode on VapePassion.com. Just do a search for episode 57. If you want to support the show, consider donating to my Patreon page at patreon.com/VapePassion. You can follow me on Twitter at VapePassion, and I'm also on Facebook if you want to leave me a comment. If you like this weekly show, please consider giving me a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. You can also subscribe to the podcast version of the show on either iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. If you'd like to get notifications of new reviews or of the show, you can sign up to receive my weekly email on VapePassion.com. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me anytime at alex@vapepassion.com. All right, I'll see you next week.